Before I start my statement, I want to make 2 points. One would be to ask, without objection, for the record, a statement by the National Association of Assistant U.S. Attorneys be included.
Without objection.
And then you reminded me of something when you talked about Senator Cornyn's involvement in our First Step Act. You and I keep referring to your and my cooperation on it, but we have not forgotten. I know you haven't. Senator Cornyn, Senator Lee, Senator Booker's here now, and I'm
Senator
probably.
Whitehouse.
I'm probably.
White House.
Yeah, and I'm probably leaving somebody out, but at least those. And then we got to remember, when you and I were starting out with a small group of people on this, that when it finally passed, it passed 87-12. So we wondered, where did all this opposition come from for so long a period of time with such an overwhelming passage of our legislation? But I make these points because too often you and I refer to each other, and neither one of us intend to leave out other people that cooperated.
You should always mention those other people one time for sure.
Yeah, okay, and no more than one time, right? Okay, let's go to Director Carval. We welcome you. We thank you for being here. I look forward to your answers to committee's questions, as the issues before us are very extremely important. The committee last held an oversight hearing with the Bureau of Prisons, 2019. That was pre-COVID and before the first anniversary of the First Step Act. And obviously, as Senator Durbin has said, a lot has changed. So it's about time that we dig in, discuss these issues. In December 2018, President Trump signed the First Step Act. Getting the First Step Act passed was a very difficult effort, as I've already referred to. It required buy-in from nearly all members of Congress, the White House, the federal agencies, including your agency. Chairman Durbin and I teamed up to get the First Step Act passed 2.5 years ago, and I'm grateful for the continued collaboration that I have with the chairman, working together. I consider the passage of the First Step Act as one of my good things that I've done since being a senator. It's because of the hard work and overwhelming bipartisan nature of the First Step Act that I'm disheartened with lackluster implementation. It seems as though the Justice Department, and within that department, the Bureau of Prisons, are implementing the First Step Act as if they want it to fail. I hope this isn't true, but actions speak louder than words, and the inaction of the Justice Department, the BOP, on this, I think, paints a very difficult picture. I understand that the COVID-19 pandemic hijacked many of the implementation efforts, but your agency must do better and follow the law without excuse. An example of half-hearted implementation is the prison programming. Programming is critical for inmates. It prepares them to successfully re-enter society and allows them to earn time credit towards their sentences. Without effective programming, inmates will leave prison unequipped and possibly prone to reoffend. But the agency has been slow to resume programs for prisoners in light of COVID-19 restrictions. The lack of programming is setting inmates up to fail. Also, the Justice Department still hasn't issued a complete needs assessment tool as required by the Act. The risk and needs assessment system is critical in evaluating inmates' individual recidivism risk and tailoring appropriate programming to combat those risks. Without complete needs assessment tools, the law is only partially fulfilled, so another failure of implementation. Lastly, a current Justice Department position on home confinement fails to comply with the spirit of the First Step Act. March 2020, Attorney General Barr responded to calls by this senator and Chairman Durbin to increase the use of authorities in the First Step Act to place inmates in home confinement to mitigate the risk of the virus spreading. Earlier this year, the Justice Department released a memo stating that when the pandemic ends, nearly 4,000 nonviolent inmates who are currently at home in confinement will be returned to the prison's secure custody program. This means that almost 4,000 people who have abided by the terms of home confinement will be removed from their homes and returned to the facility. Obviously, if they can stay where they are, it's going to save the taxpayers a lot of money, and it would also help people who aren't prone to reoffend and allows inmates to successfully reenter society as productive citizens. So, Mr. Director, I look forward to our discussion on how you can re-examine and prioritize this important legislation. We must also, at this time, discuss the Bureau of Prisons' response to COVID-19 pandemic. As of April 14th, 230 federal inmates and agency staff members died from COVID. People are incarcerated to pay their debts to society, but they shouldn't have to pay with their lives. I urge you to use your position as director to ensure that not one more life is lost from the virus, and I hope that this hearing allows us to look forward. I'm encouraged by your optimism, Mr. Director, for the future of the Bureau of Prisons. Your job is difficult and often thankless, and I suppose I haven't been very thanking to you in my remarks, but it's critically important for the job to get done. The weight of success of the First Step Act is on your shoulders, and your leadership will undoubtedly be critical in navigating federal corrections in post-virus world. Finally, I want to remind you that the Bureau of Prisons has responsibility to respond to all congressional inquiries, including those from the minority, in a timely and complete manner. I sent you a letter in March 2020, and it's been more than a year with no response, and that should be considered by everybody, including you, as unacceptable. When I was chairman, I made the same point on behalf of my Democratic colleagues. That responsibility falls to you. The Justice Department and FBI need to have a real problem with that responsibility. Seem to have. I strongly urge you to send a letter, answer the letter. I look forward to working with you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry I took so much time.
No, that's